Episode 82, Turning Habits into Rituals with Kat Jenkins.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and certified through the Life Coach School. Together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
We have all been taught how habits can create better results in our lives and help us reach our goals and dreams. But Coach Kat Jenkins believes habits are just the beginning. She helps her clients move from habits, which are based in actions, to rituals, which can look like habits, but then they are practices that have deeper meaning and purpose. This episode will help you see how you can move from habit actions to a life of meaningful rituals that don't just help you accomplish your goals, but create sacred spaces out of the seemingly mundane daily tasks we all engage in as we live our lives.
All right, today I am here with Coach Kat Jenkins. Kat and I live in the same area, so it's fun I get to see her occasionally in person I'm excited to get to chat with her today. It's funny how we can live in the same town, but yet we still are recording this virtually.
Yep.
Kat, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us about you before we get going today.
Yeah. My name's Kat Jenkins, obviously. I am a habits coach. We talk a lot about habits, and specifically today we're going to be talking about rituals, which I'm super excited about. I was going to say my life coaching journey started in 2018, but I don't think it started then. I think it started way before. But like in 2018, I found this book. It was called The One Thing by Gary Keller. I don't know if you've read it. It was like,
I haven't.
I was enthralled with this book. Like I read it at work and I read it so fast and I just loved every bit of it. And I remember talking to one of my coworkers and was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to change my life. Like my life will be changed by this book. Granted, I did not implement everything and I didn't change my life the way I thought it was going to when I read it, but it was like the beginning, I think, of what really got me on this, like, I can do something different. I can think something different. I can like change my life by like making different choices in my life. And it was like really the beginning of like, what? Like, oh my goodness. And so from there, I found their podcasts and then I found other podcasts and I found Jody Moore and I found the Life Coach School. And I just was like, I need to be certified. Like I need to be a life coach. That's what I need to do. And so I certified about a couple of years ago. And in that time, I've done a lot of trying things out. I've tried a lot of different niches, a lot of different things. And I feel like I've now finally come like full circle back to like, I love habits. And the starting of this with The One Thing and this Gary Keller book was like the thing that I'm like, that is actually what I love. And so that's what really like got me going in this like habits coaching direction. And of obviously Atomic Habits by James Clear and like The Power of Habits and like all of these other books that we just all love because they just really change our lives. And so that's how I kind of got into coaching and how I'm back here to talking about habits where I like initially started like my learning journey. So it kind of came full circle.
I feel like I need to read that book. I feel like I've read all the books and then I've heard of this one now that I for sure gonna need to go get, and I have to apologize for my cold to all those who are listening. I'm sorry you have to listen to my voice. We'll try to let Kat get all the talking in today. But I like, to me, habits are so, they're kind of ingrained in me. Like I love them. I love habits. I love being very, I don't know, like I'm a creature of habit and I feel like my life is out of sync when the habits aren't quite there. So I am super excited to talk about this today, and especially your take on rituals, because I'm excited to hear what your thoughts are there.
I have a lot of thoughts. So
okay, good. I love that. Okay. So explain to me then, as a coach who helps people with habits and rituals, what exactly is that? What does that look like?
So let's start by talking about like what habits are, right? Like, because habits are automatic. we can develop habits without even trying. Like, we are constantly developing habits without even trying. And that's, I think, where we come to like, oh, the power of habits in our life, because we want to be more intentional with our habits, and we want to be like more specific about how we want those habits to work for us. But in reality, like, we're constantly creating habits. And I was just talking to a friend who, she just did like the Whole30, and she was like, had to change all the things she did. And she was like, and one of the things she said was like, I cannot believe like all the habits that I have in place that I didn't realize I had in place, because they're so automatic. They just come. And then we have like routines. Then like from a habit, like then we have our routines, like our morning routine, our like daily routine, our nightly routine, like the way that we do things in an order. Like, I plug my Apple Watch in, and then I go brush my teeth, and then I wash my face, and then I put my pajamas on, and then I get in bed. Like, it's always the same like set of things. But the habits are done for the purpose of the action. Like, we do these habits because we want to do this action. Maybe we want to like drink more water, or like exercise more. Like, we want to set these habits because we want to do this particular action, whatever it is. Like, pray. Like, I want to pray more. So I do it for the reason of like, if I want to get in the habit of saying my prayers at night, I want to do that action of prayer. But when we take it to like beyond the like routine, beyond the habit, like now we're getting into like a ritual. And so what that is like way more intentional about the things that we're doing. It's like it's a meaningful practice. Like, we're really doing it like in a much more meaningful way. And some of the words that as I've been researching rituals, that they like are always connected with it is like these beautiful coaching words that we hear all the time, like intention, focus. We do it with intent. We do it with engagement. Like, we're really like in the process when we like set rituals for ourselves. So instead of doing it for the purpose of the action, we're now doing it for the purpose beyond the action, outside of just the action. Like, there's more to it than just doing the action. And so I like to say that our rituals give your habits heart. Like, our habits start like on the A line, basically. Like, they're things that we want to do. They're the actions we want to take. And so we would go to our A line to find what those habits are and how we want to like change them. But as we know as coaches, like, and knowing the model, like, if we don't change that feeling line, if we don't have the right feeling, then like, we can change that action line all day long, but if our heart's not in it, if we don't have like that desire, then it's not going to be long lasting, and it's not going to like really produce the results that we want. So I love bringing rituals into it, because as we do it with more intention. Like, we bring our heart into it, and the feelings behind the habits can then become a lot more clear and a lot more deep, like in us, like we really want to do them. So I have a couple examples. So like I was saying, like, if you want to drink more water, like, we can make the habit of drinking more water. But if we want to make that like an actual ritual, like what does that look like, right? Like, how do I make that more meaningful for me? So this is some of the things that we do with our clients. Like, what are our goals? What are our intentions? What do we really want to do? Like, what habits are we trying to build? And how can we turn that into something that's going to be way more meaningful? It's going to make us like, help us like want to do that on a daily basis. So if your habit was, or your goal was like, I want to drink more water, how do we turn that into a ritual? Well, this is how I would do it. So most of us have water bottles, right? So you go to the fridge and you're filling your water bottle. In this action of filling the water bottle, which is your habit, right? Getting our water, we're thinking about filling our body with this water, this new, like, it's going to be cleansing for us. We are thinking about like how this might fill our soul. As we watch the water bottle fill, we're like doing something that is much more meaningful and much more important to us. And we can then set that as a ritual, because who doesn't want to fill their bodies with like light and with like this resource of water that's going to like help fill them, because we all know we need it and we all need to drink more of it. But how do we make it so that we want to do it and it's not just a chore? We make it a ritual, and we say, look, I'm filling this water bottle, and as it's filling, like, that's going to like fill my soul. It's going to fill my body. It's going to like, so it's like much more meaningful and intentional the way that we do it.
As you're talking about this, and I know you're talking about water, but I am thinking, which seems like kind of lighthearted and not I don't know, not something too deep. However, it reminds me of what we talk about, like when we sanctify or when we make something holy. And that's more like religious terms, but we can say our prayers, but which is basically just words, right? Like we can just go through the motions, but once our intent is to sanctify and to connect with God, we make it holy and it changes it.
Yeah. I love that, because that's exactly what it is. Like our rituals are like very sacred, right? And they're sacred to us for a reason, and we get to choose what that reason is and why we're making it sacred and holy to us, and how we sanctify those actions to the Lord, basically, and to like however you want to display that. But that's exactly what it is. Like the things that we are doing on a daily basis, like are the habits and the things that we do, when we like make them a ritual and turn them into something sacred and holy for us, we're much more likely to do them, and to do them in a way that is not going to feel like drudgery and like, oh, I have to do this. Like now all of a sudden it's like, I want to do this because it is like totally filling me up and making me like feel like a better person and making me feel whole, right? Like a whole person, like, and complete, which is what that whole process does. But we can also do that for anything, like like you said, prayer. Like prayer can just be this action that we do, but it also can be super sacred. Like I was thinking about this, like how do you turn prayer into a ritual, right? Like how can we make it more meaningful to us? And when our knees hit the floor, we can think about how we're humbling ourselves before the Lord, right? Like we're being very intentional about the things. When our hands come together, we can think of it as like this connection with God. Like he's here and I'm here and we're connecting together. It's not just like an act that I'm doing, but it is sacred. It is special. When we bow our heads, we're like bringing the reverence into the communication that we're about to have. Like all of those things that we do, like are just actions that we do, but we can turn them into something much more meaningful and much more important to us and who we're becoming, right? Which is exactly why we coach, because we want to become a much better version of ourselves.
And I can't help but think that has to be the reason why it is done that way in the first place, right? That has to be the reason why we hit our knees, why we fold our arms or clasp our hands or bow our head. Like, I can't believe that that's just like random. Let's just do it this way. Right. Like there has to be a reason why. And when you think about those reasons why, it does bring so much more purpose and so much more clarity and sacredness, I think, into the whole process.
I totally agree. And how much more likely are we to do it when that's what's going with that, when that's what the purpose behind it, right? It's not just like to check a box or to do the thing, but it's really like a sacred communication between us and our Father in heaven. Like when we make it as such, like we're much more likely to even share more probably and give more in the communication when we open ourselves up like that.
I for sure noticed that for myself. When I take the time to think about what I'm actually doing, what the meaning of the prayer is, it makes a really big difference in, I don't want to say quality, because I don't think that we can't rank our prayers by quality or whatever, but actually it's maybe my connectedness is what it is. Like I can feel a deeper connection within me with Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, and it obviously makes a big difference. So I'm curious, as you work with people, what rituals do you find that people need the most help with?
And this is an interesting question, because it really starts with like figuring out, because everybody's different. It's going back to our core values. Like, what is it that you really want? Like, what is it that you're really trying to like become, and who are you trying to be, and how do you want to get there, and like how can we build your current habits maybe and the things that you're doing into more of a ritual, so it does help you become more of that person that you want to be. So you're driving from your core, right? Like from the core values and the core things that you want. And so it really is sometimes some discovery. Like sometimes we think it's one thing and we start going down that path and we're like, you know what? That's not actually the thing that I that I thought that I was the most important. I'm feeling like it's more my relationship with my kids, or like it just can change over time as we start to develop them. But we can find rituals that are going to help drive your core values at any time. And they do change over time too.
Yeah. It sounds like the intention isn't just in the rituals, but it's also being very intentional on figuring out what your own core values are, what is important to you. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I think we think that there's just these main handful of values, that we speak about in young women's or young men's. And it's much more specific than faith and divine nature. And it's the values that are unique to us, and they're different for every single person.
And that's really the beauty of it, right? Is like discovering what those are.
Yeah. And so I like, just for example, like some of my values that I've discovered that are really important to me are uniqueness and freedom and integrity. And I think, just like some examples, I think kind of help us see that it isn't just like those standard things that we think they are. It's really helpful to try to dig a little deeper and figure out what those things are.
Yeah. And sometimes we can't figure them out until we really start, until we like.
Yeah, you have to experiment.
Exactly. And until we're willing to do that, it's like, I guess it's, faith, divine nature. Like you said, I guess it's just my individual worth. But like you said, there's more behind those that we can, they're just waiting to be unearthed and discovered.
Yes.
Yeah.
People get a little bit like, don't know what to do with that, but I think it's so fun to spend the time. And it does really help to have somebody guide you in that process and dig deeper and ask with those questions.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's hard to figure them out for ourselves until we start like talking them out loud and saying them in front of somebody. And then we go, wow, that is really something that is important to me that I hadn't realized was always there. Yeah. So it's really cool.
It is very cool. All right. So I will say that there are things about me that sometimes I think, I told you I'm a creature of habit, and I feel like I sometimes walk this fine line of being a creature of habit or being a little obsessive, a little OCD about things. I'm not saying who, but OCD might run a little bit in my family. But how do you walk that line? Like where do you, and help me walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, because obviously this is a little bit like, I mean, it's not obsessive compulsive necessarily when we do rituals, but they can come to that point. Like, and when we start to prioritize that over other things, that's when we know we've gone past that line, right? And it's always, we want to check in with that energy. Like, what's the energy behind it? Is it to better myself, or is it, because when you start talking about OCD, people do those actions because they're trying to avoid anxiety, or they're trying to calm their anxiety. They're trying to like, it might be a little bit of a buffer, right? Like, I don't want to feel this emotion. So, and I want to make sure that I turn my stove off. So I'm just going to go look at it 6 times or whatever it is. Like, that's to help calm their anxiety. So when we start looking at like that, we have to look at the energy behind it, because the energy behind a ritual is not to buffer from or escape those emotions. It's more to like instill in us the emotions that we want, right? Like the love that we're looking for, the connection that we might be looking for, the things that are behind that ritual that's going to help propel us in those directions. So we really want to step back, and I mean, you have to be willing to look at like, where is it coming from? Is it coming from an energy of, I'm trying to do it to avoid something, or am I trying to do it to propel myself in a certain direction?
I like to think of emotions as they really come from one of 2 places. They either come from a source of fear, or they come from a source of love.
Yeah.
And so I think that would probably be a pretty good indicator in this point, right? If you're looking at what's the driving force behind it, is this coming from a place of fear, or is this coming from a place of love and expansion and light?
Yeah.
And I, the other thing I think is interesting about that, thinking of things in terms of, fear and love, is if you think about it too, like those are the opposing energy forces in the world too, right? That's, Jesus Christ, and that's the adversary, and we get to choose.
Yeah. I love that because a lot of what I think about when I think of rituals is like heart, like really like it come and when you think love, you think hearts, right? And so I just think that that's like such a good explanation of that. So when it's coming from like our heart and from love and from openness and connectedness, like then we know that it's coming
Mm-hmm.
from that place that
Mm-hmm.
where we want like that light to come in instead of like running away,
Yeah.
being scared. Yeah.
We had a lesson in Young Women's on Sunday, and it was about how do we connect with God? And the girls really brought it back to it's the basic, simple prayer, read your scriptures, go to the temple answers. And I just kept wanting them to remember, however, that yes, as we make those things habits, and I didn't say it in these terms, but this is making me think in these terms that yes, it's important to make them habits, but they're so much more powerful when they become
Yeah.
ritual, when they're
Yeah.
not just something that we do and expect or think that because we do this, then we are going to get this. That's just not how it works.
Right. It's like the cause and effect. Like if I do
Yes.
this, I'll get this effect. Like that's how it should work. And it's
Yes.
not always like that.
Yeah.
The thing that I always find interesting too with rituals is like we have this like we all want control, right? Like as human beings, we want to control every situation. We talk a lot about that in coaching and like how we're
We can't do that.
No.
We can't.
I mean, we have control over certain things, which is why I love rituals because it is a way to implement control into our lives that we didn't otherwise have. Because we're always trying to look outside to get that control everywhere else, right? Like I want to control my kids, I want to control this, I want to control like my job and my promotions, and I want to be able to control all the things, but the only things that we have control of, right, are like how we're going to think, how we're going to feel, how we're going to act, and like we are like that model of ourselves. And so rituals are the exact way to like help bring that control into our own lives and be like, I have control over how this is going to look. And I think about this when because I have two teenagers, kids at home. I have a son on a mission and my two teenage kids at home. And sometimes I want to control them. Sometimes I want them to like do certain things. Sometimes
Or all the time.
Right. Or every single time. Like, didn't I say do your homework? I don't know why it's not done yet. like, what is wrong here? So I really think even in those situations, like things that you wouldn't think like, how do I make that a ritual? Like you could totally turn like conversations with your kids into like a ritual, like this thing where you really go into it with like an openness and a connectedness. And so I've started being like, when my kids talk to me, like I put my phone down. I listen, like, and it's not that action of putting the phone down, but it's that openness that we're then willing to like, okay, this is a sacred space. This is a sacred communication between you and I, whether it's about school or, church or whatever, like whatever that communication is, like just being willing to say, I choose, I have control. I will be present in this moment for them every single time. And it could turn into an argument, or it could turn into like words that I didn't want to have, but at least I chose in that moment how I wanted to act, and I will be present. I will set my phone down. I will listen with an open mind and a willingness to hear what they have to say. I will not interrupt. I have issue with that. Like I am an interrupter. No, like that is not how it should be. So I've been really working on this, like, and I've just really noticed how it changes that conversation and the communication and the connectedness that we have, because I'm willing to control what I can control, which is
right.
This.
Well, the interesting thing is it's changing your side of it, but not that you're not trying to control them, but
Right.
It does have a natural effect on how that relationship or the conversation goes, where you're not. It's amazing what happens when you stop trying to control a situation. The communication is probably much better or much more like you want it to be when you're not trying to force something, when you actually try to be more intentional, more ritualistic in the way that you talked about doing it.
Yeah. So it's like this sacred space. Now the conversation is a sacred space instead of just like, go clean your room. Why aren't you doing the things I told you to? Why?
I'd love some more examples of rituals or things that, ways of creating rituals out of those typical habits. Do you have any other thoughts you want to share with us on that?
Well, tell me what is something that you work on? Like, what is some of your goals?
As we're talking, I'm sitting here thinking that I have a lot of habits in my life. I can see how could greatly benefit from viewing them more as rituals rather than the habits of things. I have really been trying to make a habit out of meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I have kind of got there, like I was really good at, here's my other problem is that I feel like if I'm going to create a habit of something, I just have to get up earlier in the morning because I don't have the time in the day to add the other things. So before I know it, I find myself getting up earlier and earlier. I'm like, this is not sustainable for me, which is what happens with meditating for me. And so what's happened is, as I have started trying to be more intuitive and recognizing my body needs this sleep, my meditation practice has just kind of gone out the window again, which I miss it. Mm-hmm. I do, but I guess the story I'm telling myself is I just must not miss it enough or must not like it enough that I want to get up earlier to do it.
That is such a good point, right? Like, this is how we figure out, like, okay, so I want to do meditation. I'm telling myself the only time I can do it is in the morning. So I must have to get up earlier to do that. Mm-hmm. But can we meditate while we're cooking? Like, I meditate while I'm cooking dinner all the time. Like, I just because I don't believe you have to sit there to meditate. So it's up to you and how you want to choose to meditate. But like, just being willing to open up to that, like, making dinner is a sacred space for me sometimes. And that is like where I can I don't have to think about what I'm doing, so I can think about other things. Like, sometimes we put podcasts on and sometimes we listen to things, but we can just be silent in those moments. And it doesn't have to be long and it doesn't have to be hard, but that could be a beautiful ritual for you if cooking is your thing, if baking is your thing, or if that is your thing. Like, that's why we get down, like, what do you love, and how can we build something that you love into a ritual that can then connect together? And now all of a sudden it's like much more meaningful in a way that
having you
sacred space.
Yeah, having you say that making dinner is a sacred space for me really kind of sparked something. Like, that was really interesting for me to hear you say that, because I do think that there's lots of room in my life to create something sacred out of the spaces that are already there, the things I'm already doing.
Yeah.
There's lots of binge watching of Netflix when I'm making dinner these days.
And that's okay too.
But no, what I'm thinking is that I think that as much as that has kind of been a fun thing for me to do, like, having you say that it's a sacred space for you gave me a little bit of a food for thought. Like, how much more enjoyable might it be if I could allow that to be there as well?
Yeah.
Or instead of. So anyway, thank you. Thanks for sharing that with me.
Yeah. We can build it into any part of our life. Like, there's no limits. I think sometimes, like you said, we get into this thought that well, then I must have to get up earlier to make more time for something else. Because it's just I need more time for all the things that I want to build in. But how can we really build these rituals into our daily life? Because what do we always say? You are what you repeatedly do. We are what we do on a regular basis. Like, you are what you do on a continual basis, which is not the necessarily I have to get up earlier to exercise and do all those things, but what are the daily things that you are doing every moment that is feels trifle and feels well, I just do it. So we it's like Groundhog's Day, right? I'm doing the same day over and over.
I don't know how many times I said that when my kids were little. I'm like, well, it's Groundhog's Day.
Here we
number
go.
755.
It just keeps coming. And so that's how when we start to feel like that, building a ritual into how can I make some of these spaces more sacred for me? How can I make some of these practices that I do much more meaningful for me, and also my family maybe, or a relationship with my husband if we're working on that? How can we set aside some space so that we can have some sacred time together that's just for us?
Sudden, I felt like there's much more time in my day than I actually thought. Is also what came along with that was, some of the things that I think I have no time for, I think I really have more time than I think that I have, if I look at it from that perspective. And that in and of itself is a gift, thinking that we have more time than we have. Yeah.
Realizing there's way more in here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am wondering what ritual that you practice that has made the biggest impact in your life.
So I just started this probably 5 or 6 months ago. So my birthday is June 26th. And so anytime I see the clock and it says 6:26, I always think of my birthday. Like, and I always think like, oh, like that's my birthday. And so a few months ago, I was like, I am going to start like, that is like sacred time for me now. So I set an alarm on my watch at 6:26 every evening. My alarm goes off and it's called Kat's gratitude time for her. It's not even long. It's like literally like I take 60 seconds at the most. And I just like I just touch my heart and I just give a sec to just say how thankful I am for me and like that I was born and that I'm here on this earth and that I'm just grateful for like that I can be here like right now in this day, like that I was here. And it has changed so much for me. Like now sometimes, and I'm not always up at 6:26 in the morning, but when I see it at 6:26 in the morning, I'm like, ooh, I could do it then too. Like, so if you're lucky enough to be born at a time when you're awake at both those times, you could totally do it at both those times. Doing it once a day every day for the last like 5 months, I've just like, sometimes I'm in the grocery store and people probably look at me and I'm just like, give me a sec. This is my little time. Like driving, from the airport and just give me a sec. I'm just giving me a sec. And I just say, and it's helped me so much. And it feels like a sacred time. Like during that time of 6:26 every evening, it's just for me. It's just for me to be thankful for me.
That is really a sweet and tender practice. And thank you for sharing that. That sounds very intriguing and very enlightening, I'm sure. I want to know something else that maybe you just really think we need to know, something that you love and find so interesting.
Oh, I love this. Somebody told me about this and I've just been like enthralled with it ever since. In Chinese, it's called Wu Wei. I think that's how you say it. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but it basically is interpreted as doing nothing, which in this you're thinking like, what? Like doing nothing? Like how does that have to do with like us setting rituals and habits? Like that doesn't make any sense. But it is like, it's the paradox of the Wu Wei is that it's not necessarily doing nothing, but it's like effortless action. And that's what I think of when I think of rituals, right? Like they're like actions that we do and the things that we like take in, but they're effortless because they are so meaningful and because they're so sacred to us. Now all of a sudden they don't feel like I have to do something. And so the art of the Wu Wei is like doing it in an effortless way. And it's like when you hear people who are like in the zone, like, right? Like in sports, like they're in the zone, like they're not even trying and they're hitting every basket or whatever it is. Like that's what Wu Wei is. And that's, I think, what our rituals do for us. Like they put us in this zone, in this like flow of our lives where everything just starts to come and it doesn't feel like it's like we're working really hard for it. It's just like it's flowing through us. And so I think of that as we like build our rituals and as we build like the things that are most important to us, and rituals give us that space to like give time, like you were talking about time, like that's how we can build time for the things that are really important to us, is through our rituals. Like now we make time for them in a way that's like super important to us because we don't want to cut that out because it's like something that is meaningful to us. And I just love that about this Wu Wei, like that we're effortlessly doing and things are flowing to us and it just feels like it's natural and who we are, and we're just like in that state of like we're making it happen.
And who doesn't want that, right? Like I can think of those times in my life where it just does feel like flow. And I apologize for my dog. There must be somebody delivering something. But that feeling of flow is something that when I feel, I'm like, oh, I want this all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love Wu Wei, the Wu Wei. Yeah. All right. So we got to hear about the Wu Wei. I am so glad you shared that with us.
Yeah.
I just feel like people need help in making these rituals in their lives, adding more meaning, because I think that's really what it is, right? The more meaning we can put into our lives, the more purposeful things feel, the easier, and I guess the more woo it feels. Like where can they find more of you so that they can get help in implementing these things?
I am Coaching with Kat, so you can find me at coachingwithkat.com. You can find me Coaching with Kat on Instagram or Facebook. Just type in Coaching with Kat. You will.
Okay.
And that's Kat with a K, K-A-T,
Yep.
Coaching with Kat. So
Awesome. Kat, thank you so much. I'm leaving today with a lot of things that I am excited to implement into my life. And I kind of think that I'm pretty good at habits. And now I see that I really want to shift those habits into rituals.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I love it. Thank you for sharing with me.
Thank
it was
you.
really fun to be on here.
Oh, it was so fun to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. And Kat, thanks once again.
Thanks.
Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.